Hey guys, so today I want to take the time to talk a bit about books. I think everybody can relate that books are a great resource for learning, for experiencing new things, and I mean the main advantages are they introduce new ideas and viewpoints to us. They offer insights from my point of view, even into the human experience, how other people see the world. That has been incredibly valuable for me in the past. And I feel like we can even fast track understanding kind of previous human iterations and ways previous humans thought about things that took a lot of time to dive into the topic, and use this knowledge for our own life, which is great, be it in career, be it in private life, and so on. And I think even today, a lot of people read books, which is admirable in itself. I think devoting time to reading in a world full of distractions that we live in speaks to the commitment that you as an individual have for learning and self-improvement. But probably you can relate. I think most people don't remember anything from the books they read. Like despite investing hours into reading, or sometimes even multiple days, retaining even the major points or anything apart from the main point is uncommon. Also for me, I have many books that I read, and I could not recall any more points than maybe the one or two major ones, or maybe one supporting argument. What I invested many hours into it. So today I want to dive deeper into the question, why is that, and also how we can stop that. So then let's dive right into it. So these methods I'm going to describe are a blend of my personal experience and are heavily inspired by Farnam Street, which is an online newsletter that I link in the video description. It's an awesome read for anyone who wants to basically shortcut their knowledge into more complex topics. I think it's very valuable. So yeah, these books that are depicted here are some of my favorites. Frankly speaking, the Feynman lectures on physics. It's a giant read, and this is a read where some of the methods I'm going to describe later come in very handy. I'm still on that, but the other two I finished some months, even years ago, I think. The Art of Learning was recommended by a friend to me, and I think it's a great book that illustrates how to keep an open mind, how to nourish a growth mindset. And Anna Karenina is it's still a pretty tough read. I think it's fine, and it's definitely very enjoyable. So yeah, let's dive in. I think one of the main reasons is that we don't consume what we used to is the overhang of short form content that we all experience, be it Instagram Reels, be it TikTok, be it YouTube Shorts. I've been an addict to YouTube Shorts myself, so I can completely relate. I think it makes it hard to focus because we kind of get wired to consume content in a way shorter form, way more dopamine rewards, and way quicker. So yeah, because of that, we tend to skim and we tend to do light reading at max. Meaning, this is what we're taught in education. This is our upper bound. If it works in education, primary school, secondary school, whatever, high school, um, it works for us in life as well. And while some of us use other media for learning, I think books do offer something which is advantageous to gain a truly deep understanding of a topic. And I think all of these things are things we can't really change. Like, I think our brains are wired that way that they receive more reward through short form content, and that's fine. So we need to adjust our methods. So let's talk about the four levels of reading: elementary reading, inspection reading, analytical reading, syntopical reading. As you can see on the right hand side, I put a very simple explanation for you to remember. Let's start with the first two. So elementary reading, reading to entertain, and inspection reading, reading to inform. These two stages, I think everybody that watches this video and can intellectually grasp it is able to do these two. They're pretty basic, but the highest value that you can derive from reading comes actually from the last two, at least for more complex books. So let's dive into it. Elementary school, yeah, elementary reading, right? If you went to elementary school, you got it. Like, it's pretty simple. It's literally the process of understanding individual letters and how they align with each other. And this is basically reading for the sake of reading. It's fine. You will rarely remember anything that you read from elementary reading. It's basically like if you quickly need an information, okay, let's go. You read it, perfect. This is okay, and I think it's a mode that you can still nourish for entertainment purposes. So if you're reading a book, understanding what a character did and remembering that this is the main thing you need. You don't need to dive into the philosophical discussions, perhaps. For some books, as said, for Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, so it might be worth it. But for most books, I think it's completely fine to keep this mode of reading. Let's go into inspectional reading. I think if you went to any university or even like upper levels of high school, did any self-studying of any kind, this is you, right? This is something that you can definitely do. Inspection reading, I would describe as either skimming or reading very quickly. So meaning even a paper you can read, a literal like scientific paper in an inspection reading mode, which would just mean, okay, let's go through it, let's understand the main points, look at the methods, results, and maybe think a few minutes about shortcomings about the methods or what you can actually take from it. But in itself, this is also not a bad thing. So especially skimming, I think, is a really great idea if you use it systematically. I think the two situations where you want to where you want to use this inspection reading mode is firstly if you want to basically determine the value of the book or get the main ideas. So, for example, if you read a pop psychology book or even self-improvement books, you can you can basically read the introduction or the first chapter, skim over it, and you will get the main ideas from my point of view. And that's probably the point where it's best to just stop reading because the rest is mostly going to be a huge waste of time. Um, and otherwise, this helps you to get the main ideas, and otherwise, it's also super useful for any book you read to just do an inspection reading first. Skim through the chapters. You don't need to take a book chronologically. Understand if there are actually parts that you need. Don't waste 3, 4, 5 hours into a book before having deemed it worth reading, in all honesty. And exactly, the good thing is now, if you use this inspection reading, you can prepare yourself for the next two stages, which is perfect. Yeah, analytical and syntopical reading. I have this question mark here. Honestly, this is the real work you need to do if you want to fully penetrate a topic and understand it thoroughly. So yeah, let's dive in. Let's firstly start with analytical reading. Analytical reading is something where you basically make the material your own, right? So you should do this after the inspection reading, and this will help you in synthesizing the information. So with the inspection reading, you have a good grasp of how the book is structured, what are the different points, and so on. And now you can basically follow these 4 steps. Firstly, classify the book according to its own kind and subject matter. So this can help a lot in understanding and basically categorizing it in the different brackets you have. State what the whole book is about with the utmost brevity. This just helps you in synthesizing in your brain, basically. Then enumerate its major parts in the order and relation, outline these parts, and lastly define the problem or the problems the author is trying to solve. This is a great way, we can even do these parts within one chapter, depending on the complexity of the book, to really, really narrow down the main important points that an author makes, because every author elaborates. That's just the nature of reading at times, although it's still better than speaking. And this helps you to actually remember this. And one method I want to quickly show is also the blank sheet method for this case. So here is actually one of the mind maps that I used. So how the blank sheet method works is you just take a piece of paper or a digital piece of paper, right? So I use Miro as a whiteboarding tool, which works pretty well. I think doing it on paper, on an iPad or on a Remarkable tablet or so, is which I personally use, which I really love, is actually much more advantageous because I personally remember many more things if I write them down by hand, just as with journaling and so on. I think writing by hand is super underrated and neglected. Um, but nonetheless, if you use Miro, what you basically do is you take all the different chapters from book through the inspection reading. You should have them grow like a rough overview of how the book is structured, and you add these as points in the mind map, right? As individual circles around it. And when you start reading a book, or like let's say a chapter, this book, for example, was A City on Mars, and I actually stopped reading it. So I didn't deem it worth reading because for me it was not dense enough in terms of information. You can write down all these different chapters and write down bullets which you actually like about topics that you actually know about it already. So for example, let's talk about here the difficulties with space travel. Um, there are a lot of difficulties. For example, the small number of astronauts that have been in space, they're all highly trained. They're not representative for an average human in space. You have the problem of microgravity. You only have a small share of Earth's gravity, and so on. Write down all these bullets and their individual arguments before reading the book even. That's actually the best way. I know it's quite taxing, but that's the best way to do this. And after you did one iteration of reading, so let's say you sat down, you worked on the book for 1.5 hours or 45 minutes or 3 hours, and then you can basically correct your thinking. So you can literally cross out your wrong points or your points where you had a misconception, write the right points. And what I really like to do, which for that paper is king, you can actually mark your reading session with a specific color. So let's say you did a reading session on the 27th of July. Make all of the points that you learned there yellow. And from my point of view, a life hack, even when you do that, you can really see the evolution of the topic. And what you should do is obviously, when you start a new reading session, review the last points. And one of the best things about this, you can literally use your new learnings in terms of arguments, concepts, and so on, and combine it with Anki, for example, which is just a spaced repetition system for flashcards, which I use for most parts of my life, frankly. And I think it's completely underrated. It can really help you remember these things. And if you're working on complex topics where it's required to understand math, physics, whatever, this is amazing if you just remember the different terminology. So yeah, what I can really recommend, if you have the space in the place where you live, you can actually put this into physical folders at some point. Let's say you finished a book on a topic and you maybe read five books about a topic. You put all of them in a folder and you review them categorically. For example, every month, every week, every quarter, whatever. Combine that with Anki, you're set up for life and you'll remember everything. Why does this work so well? I think the best thing is, frankly, it allows you to start from scratch. Just really put out all of your brain, all you know. It primes your brain for the learning state because you need to recite information which you previously learned. It builds the knowledge visually, as you can see here. It really gives a good overview about the different arguments and the layers of arguments. And it corrects your misconceptions, which is important because I think stating your misconceptions and then seeing, oh, okay, I was completely wrong about that, it's a great step in learning. And then layering and understanding, I think, it helps with that as well. And lastly, this quick review, especially with Anki or physically, if you have a physical folder, is frankly amazing in terms of remembering it long term. So let's go to the hardest part, the syntopical reading. So let's say you read this one book, let's say a book on physics or a book on space, and you did the analytical reading. You can't really claim the expert status now, right? So you do want to master the subject perhaps, and this is where the syntopical reading comes in very handy. It's by far the most demanding and challenging, and I think this takes multiple months, literally, depending on the topic and depending on your personal time investment to become an expert in the topic, right? So with this, if you read a book in this mode, I think it's very relevant to identify the important passages, translate them, synthesize them, and then comes the next part. Formulate your own questions, define issues, and analyze the discussion. So this would mean, let's say you read a book on psychology, right? Not pop psychology, but actual psychology books. And you analyze the discussions that people might have about a certain topic. Let's say you read into Freud and you think about the interpretation of dreams, and there are obviously a lot of conflicting arguments about, I don't know, the representativeness of the small sample size. You start reading into the actual discussions that other contemporary psychologists and psychotherapists had about this topic, right? And this is syntopical reading, where you really try to get a broad overview of, okay, I understood this topic from an intellectual perspective. What are the different viewpoints and why might they be good and bad? And you really build your own conviction about a topic. So this is not building a conviction about a book, but building a conviction about a whole topic. And I think the best thing that you can do long term to solidify your expert status, if you want to do that, is putting yourself out there and engaging with contrarian views. Because I think for every topic you can have these views which are completely misaligned with what you want to do with a topic or how you think about a topic. Um, but I would really suggest to put yourself out there. Go on LinkedIn, go on a forum. What I used to do to learn about the topic, which can also be a great first step as well. Reach out to experts. Just reach out to experts. Tell them, okay, hey, I would like to. I'm just learning about this topic. I would like to discuss with you. Do you think you have some time? Or maybe even engage with the author of the book. I think every author and every person who puts out content is feeling valued if they get asked about it, right? There's nobody that, if they don't answer, it will be more of a time thing than than actually a problem with what you ask them. So I can really recommend this. And the world is smaller than you know. You can literally sit in a room with the author of a New York Times bestseller very easily, from my point of view. And for that, LinkedIn, email, etc. is good. Just if you show that you really read their book and engage with it, they will feel very valued. So lastly, one thing I want to emphasize is while all of these modes are very valuable to know and to distinguish, I think it's important that you choose the right mode for your book and the right book for your purpose, right? So firstly, the right mode for your book. I said if I read a pop psychology book, or you should not use the syntopical reading because it's a waste of time. Frankly, I don't want to bash these pop psychology books so much, but just as one example, you might have another example that resonates with you. And the right book for your purpose is also important. That's a whole another topic in itself, but I think you should emphasize, from my experience, you should emphasize really, really choosing wisely which books you want to read. Where do you want to spend your time? Because I used to be someone that read a lot, but didn't read useful books, frankly. Like, I read books that were about the topic I was interested in, maybe, but not the right book at the right time. So sometimes reading half an hour, like reading a good book for half an hour, reading a good book or a great book a second time, can be much more worth it than reading a mediocre book or 5 mediocre books, in all honesty, which is really important. And yeah, as well as at the right book for the right mode for your book.